All right. Put them up in the All right, I got 104 on Thursday, October 26, 2023. We're here for a budget workshop, a revenue discussion, and just as a reminder before we get started, this is just a workshop, just more informational than anything, not an intent to have a lot of long drawn-out discussion or debate, more just an opportunity for Sabrina and staff to provide us with some information and for us to take time and digest it and come back and maybe debate or discuss options at a later date. So with that, Sabrina, the floor is yours.
And we're going to lead off with Mr. Devan on we're kind of taking it to, and going to do a county snapshot, kind of understand our population. And then we're going to do an overview of what we've done for capital infrastructure and what we're planning for the future. And then we're going to talk about revenues and kind of how they work. So kind of taking it back to the basics so we can all have a foundation. So in a few months when we come back to a budget workshop and start planning for the next fiscal year, we have a general understanding of how the different revenues work. So I'll turn it over to Devan.
Yeah, just before we actually start the presentation, staff is, Sabrina and Jane have worked really hard on this, and it's going to be a lot of information. And what we have discussed and we'd like for you to consider is that this is information we're passing on to you. We would like to actually have some outreach to the community and maybe hold some workshops or town hall type meetings and take this information to the community and get their input over the next 2 or 3 months, and then come back to the board in sometime February, mid to late February, with that input, and of course continuing to talk to you as individual commissioners on what you'd like to see, and at that point possibly make some decisions. So that's not anything we've absolutely nailed down, but that was something that was brought up in one of our meetings, and you know, we keep hearing that the public doesn't know how things work or what we're doing, and this might be a good opportunity to get out in the public for staff. This would be a staff generated type town hall that only staff would attend and just talk to the public, and they could talk freely. So anyway, just the information. We'll get started. And I'm going to just be giving you some statistics. Currently our population is rated at 198,494. The median age for Santa Rosa County is 40.1 years. We have a veteran population of 24,698. We have 80,364 dwelling units. The median household income is $77,260. That was a 2021 estimate. We don't have a recent one. And employment for 2023 was indicated at 30,221 jobs. As you all know, but just for the general public, we're at 1,174 square miles, 1,012 are land, 162 square miles of water. The population, we're going to do something a little different because there were some questions that came up about districts, like who's got the bigger district, who's got the most people in their district. So we wanted to help the public understand and anybody that's watching, you know, what each district looks like. So District 1, Commissioner Parker's district, there are 38,587 citizens. It's 67 square miles. In that district, we have 248 miles of county-maintained roads and 113 county-maintained holding ponds, 19,118 structures. That could be homes, businesses, whatever. And we decided to break it down a little bit. The population divided by the square miles, it averages out to 576 citizens per square mile in District 1. District 2, Commissioner Smith's district, 35,153 citizens, 249 square miles, 337 miles of county roads, 68 county holding ponds, 17,206 structures, and that one averages out to 141 citizens per square mile in District 2. District 3, Commissioner Calkins' district, 36,221 citizens, 659 square miles, 663 miles of county-maintained roads, 50 county-maintained holding ponds, 19,565 structures, and when divided out, that's 55 citizens per square mile. District 4, Commissioner Eddington, 41,628 citizens, 28 square miles, 230 miles of county-maintained roads, 83 holding ponds, 19,928 structures, or 1,487 citizens per square mile. And lastly, District 5, Commissioner Wright, 36,411 citizens. It's 23 square miles, 147 miles of county-maintained roads, 110 county-maintained ponds, 19,888 structures, and 1,583 citizens per square mile.
I want to point out, he's got the most holding ponds, too.
Per capita revenue, that's something we always like to look at. This is according to Florida Tax Watch 2022. The per capita total county revenue per citizen is $1,307. You'll see all counties go up from there. Escambia County's at $1,601 and Okaloosa at $1,758, and it continues to go up with Walton at $3,427. And that concludes my part of the presentation.
All right, so I'll speak on our capital projects. So first off, we'll hit the last 7 years. As you can see, we spent $86 million on transportation and paving, $55 million on facilities. I will highlight that the majority of that does come from the courthouse, just over $40 million for the courthouse, $36 million in economic development, $37 million in stormwater, $16 million in parks and recreation, and then $16 million in public safety. And the different sources of that, grants, $58 million, road and bridge, $54 million, debt services, once again, the courthouse, Peerage Connector, and the Benny Russell Park. Local option sales tax, $43 million, the capital fund, $34 million, and American Rescue Plan, $10 million, and then the tourist development on infrastructure side was $1 million, and that was the stuff we did out there on the beach. So we're going to follow that same trend, the per capita. So you take that, divide it by our population, 198,000, gives you $1,240 per capita of investment per citizen. So let's talk about the next 5 years. As you can see from our plan, $360 million in infrastructure investment, $255 million of those going into transportation and paving, $43 million into stormwater, $22 million public safety, $18 million parks recs, $14 million facilities, and $9 million economic. It did highlight some of the investments at the end. That's a sewer package plant there in economic development, our consolidated dispatch center, operations and development facility, the sheriff's administrative facility, numerous boat ramp improvements, Navarre Beach Bridge, which is one thing that drives that transportation and paving outlay way up. Our South Soccer Complex for recreation, different drainage projects, sidewalks, intersections, etc. So future capital spending, the same scenario there. It ends up with $1,813 of planned investment per citizen.
Per citizen, so it's the ratio is based off of the current estimated population of 198,000. So now we're going to talk about property tax and kind of getting back to the basics of understanding how ad valorem collections work. So as you can see, I have a timeline, and it's not a straight timeline. It's curved because that's kind of how we operate. It's just ebbs and flows around here. So the property value is set January 1st of every year. A trim notice goes out in August. A tax bill is sent out in November, and collections have to be made by March 31st of the following year. So let's just say that a new house is constructed and it is issued a certificate of occupancy February of 2023, so this past February. So because the house was not occupiable in January 1st of this year, it would be delayed in when we would collect it. So it will not be assessed until January of 2024. It will go out on the trim notice of August of 24. It'll show up on the 24 tax bill for collection in 2 years, which would be March of 2025. So the reason that's important is because that new value that is on the tax roll in 2024, it didn't include the house in 2023. So although someone is living in a house for majority of the year, we're not seeing that assessed value. So typically assessed value is about 2 years behind on new construction. So for January 2023, that particular piece of property would only be the land value that is going to pay property taxes. And then come 2024 of January, the assessed value would include the land and the house. So taking this year's permitting data from the inspections office, so far since January, we've issued over 1,200 certificates of occupancy for new construction. That includes single-family homes as well as commercial businesses. They have a value of over $296 million. So that means that it's going to be March of 2025 before we see the revenue for that new assessed value. So now taking it back, another step is understanding the assessments and the exemptions. And I do appreciate Mr. Brown and Carl helping me understand all of this. So it's been a process to get all of this data together for the presentation. But let's just say we have a subdivision and there are several houses on a street. And so the first house we're going to look at, its assessed value is $180,000. It has homestead exemption. It has an additional homestead exemption, a senior and a widower exemption. So all those exemptions bring down the taxable value to $100,000 for the school district and $75,000 for all other entities. So as you can see, that tax bill for 2022 would result in right at $1,000 in revenue. And of course, not all of that comes to the Board of County Commissioners. You can see how it's divided up. So, as you're all aware, Save Our Homes has a 3% cap. So using that 3% cap on the assessed value, that brings us to a taxable value of $103,000 for the school district and $77,250 for all the other entities. So that would basically result in about a $30 increase in tax revenue on this particular property in 1 year. So then our next house has no exemptions on it. Its assessed value is $400,000. It was also built in '99. And so the revenue or the tax collection on this house would be $4,600. So then, because it does not have any exemptions, the price would not be capped at 3%. So I used around 10% to estimate the ones that did not have exemptions, so that way I could keep my numbers somewhat whole. So that brings the taxable value for 23 to $440,000, and it would be for both the school board and all other entities because there are no exemptions. And so that would bring the revenue or the tax collections to a little over $5,000. So basically a $400 increase in tax revenue. This house was built in 2008 and it sold again in 2020, so that means the valuation resets. Assessed value at $400,000. It does have a couple exemptions, so it brings the school district to $375,000, and then all others at $350,000. And the reason there's the $25,000 district difference is because the school district does not. They do not get the additional exemption. So it makes Mr. Brown and his staff's job a whole lot harder figuring out each parcel. So this collection would be $4,200. And then again, because it has a homestead exemption, it would be capped at the 3%. So that brings the taxable value to $387,000 and $362,000. And the overall collections for the second year would be $4,300. And I know I'm probably boring y'all at this point, but I'll show you the point it makes in the end. So next we have a house that was constructed in 2021. It has homestead exemption, an additional a senior and a widow exemption, and the assessed value is $380,000. So the taxable value is $300 for the school district and $275 for all others, and the collection on that would be $3,300. So then this one would be capped at the 3%, so it goes up a little bit. So school district $311,000, all others $286,000, and collections would be $3,600, $3,700. So just a little more than $300 increase. Then we have a 100% disabled veteran. The house was built in 2021 and its assessed value is $450,000. So the state statute allows for parcels, ad valorem property to be 100% exempt for disabled veterans, 100% disabled veterans, but it does not exempt them from MSBU fees. So if we have MSBU fire fees, or if they're in a neighborhood that has lighting, they would not be exempt from that, but they would be exempt from the ad valorem assessment. So they would not pay anything for ad valorem, and the same for the following year. Next, we have a house that was built in 2021. It's leased, so there are no exemptions. The assessed value is $450,000. The taxable value, or the collections on that, would be $5,200. This one would also be at 10% increase, so that brings us to $495,000 for the second year, and a collection of $5,700. So right about $500 increase. And the last two examples, this one is a vacant lot with that's value is $50,000, and it would bring in a little less than $600. It goes up by 10%, and then it would be $636 in collections. So then we have an agricultural piece of property that's used for farmland, and it has a homestead on it. Its assessed value would be $250,000, and the school district would be $225,000 in taxable value, and all others $200,000, and it results in a $2,000 collections, and then it would only go up 3%, or a cap of 3%. It could be less than that. So it would bring us to $232,000 and $207,000, which results in $2,500. So That was a whole lot. So you go back to that street and just trying to demonstrate that there's such a difference in each parcel because of those exemptions. So as you can see on this street, we have a variety of different amounts, and that's what we just walked through, is understanding why your neighbor might pay less than you or why your neighbor might pay more than you. You also add pools and accessory structures to that, and that affects the value as well. So you take all of that, you take all of our parcels, which we have over 116,000 parcels in the county. The residential value is over 21 billion. That results in about 12.9 billion in taxable value. Commercial is 1.8 billion, results in 1.5 billion. The reason that is the way it is because there are very few exemptions on commercial. There are rarely none. Yeah. Agriculture is 1.3, and then it results in 220 million of taxable value, and then all of the other items, your cell towers, your miscellaneous, is 4 billion with a taxable value of 1 billion. So we went over the exemptions, and there are several exemptions offered on residential property. All of those properties that have an exemption total $3.3 billion in value, and that equates to about a $20 million revenue that we do not receive because of those exemptions. So taking all that we've went through, you take our taxable value, which is over 16 billion, you multiply it by our millage rate, that this is what you guys set every year in our September budget public hearings, and you receive 98 million in revenue. Of course, as I discussed earlier, the new construction value is delayed, so this year we're seeing a $4.7 million increase for construction, but most of that is from construction from a couple years ago. So you take that revenue amount, divide it by our population, and you get to $495 per capita, or the cost per citizen for property value.
All right, so now we're going to talk about sales tax and understanding sales tax. And I'll get Sabrina to jump to the next slide. So all tangible products are taxable in Florida with a few exceptions. Those exceptions include groceries, medicine, common household remedies, seeds, fertilizer, prosthetics, and orthopedic instruments. And we do have a 7% sales tax, as everyone knows. So here's kind of where it comes from: general merchandise, grocery stores, lumber supplies, leased office space. You can see all the different numbers there for a total spending countywide on those items of $4.5 billion. So if you take a spending snapshot like we've been doing, that ends up to $22,670 per capita spending per citizen. Breaking the 7 cent down, that equals about 4.5 billion. It gives us 315 million worth of sales tax. Of course, the first 6 pennies go to the state. We do get roughly $7 million back in some revenue sharing with them. Half cent goes to the Santa Rosa School District, and then half cent goes to our current LOST program. So looking at that, you have just over $16 million anticipated revenue in that. Times that, we use a 25% tourism factor. We have that off of a little older study that allowed that. We have not done a recent study to say how much is from tourism, so we use a 25% factor. And if you divide that out, that ends up to $61 per capita cost per citizen. So what can we spend the half cent on? Some examples of those are resurfacing the roads, new and repaired playgrounds, turn lanes, stormwater improvements, traffic signals, deputy vehicles, fire trucks, ball fields, sidewalks, ADA upgrades, et cetera. The main point is it cannot be used for county staff salaries or benefits, and you can kind of see our estimated revenue of $75 million. 45 million of that, or 60%, goes toward transportation and drainage, 22.5 million public safety, and then 7.5 million to recreation and public facilities.
Next, we have the gas tax. Last year, we collected approximately $11 million in gas tax. $3.3 million we received from the state, and the $7.6 million we received from our local option gas tax. And as you all know, we can only spend this on transportation, and these funds reside solely in the Road and Bridge Fund. These are the taxes that we pay, all the taxes that we pay on a single gallon of gas. We pay 26 cents per gallon in federal gas tax. We pay 28 cents per gallon in state gas tax. But one thing I want to point out about that state gas tax is there's a 6-cent pollutant tax in that number, as well as some inspection fees. And locally, we pay 12 cents per gallon in gas tax. So county governments are authorized to levy up to 12 cents per gallon in these three forms of levies. The first tax is a penny, and it is levied on both motor and diesel fuel, and it is known as the 9th cent tax. The board voted to implement this tax in 2015, and we can spend this on anything we wish: personnel, operations, and capital. And as you can see, we collected last year around $800,000. The second tax is a tax of up to 6 cents, and the board voted to implement the full 6 pennies decades ago. And this, like the 9th cent, can be spent on anything that we wish. And last year we received about $4 million there. The third tax is a 1 to 5 cent tax that the board voted again to levy the full amount in 2015. This can only be levied on motor fuel. Diesel fuel is exempt, not subject from this tax. And we do have some strings attached with this one. We can only spend this on capital improvements, not on personnel or operations, and we collected $2.8 million last year. You can see from this slide that the gas tax alone cannot support our Road and Bridge Fund, that in addition to the gas tax, general fund dollars, electric franchise fund dollars, grants, and some road and bridge reserves support the Road and Bridge Fund. And this is how our local option gas tax impacts our citizens. It's estimated, as Brad had mentioned earlier, that 75% of this of our residents pay this tax, and that equates to about $29 per person per year in this one. As far as this particular revenue stream goes, we're pretty maxed out. We don't have a whole lot of revenue. We don't have a whole lot of wiggle room here, and any increase in revenue that we will see will be from population growth.
So that brings us to the impact fees. So as you recall, we went over this in our June workshop, but this is from the study that was performed in single-family detached, with charging all fees would be around $1,900, right at $2,000. Detached, based off of square footage. Those over 3,000 square feet would be charged $2,200, and then you have your multifamily, your commercial, and you can kind of see down the list how they are charged per 1,000 square feet. So taking a year's worth of permitting data, we were able to determine roughly what we would receive in revenues if we were to implement the impact fees. And as you can see, we would receive about 3.3 million for transportation, about 400,000 for parks, and about 250,000 for law enforcement. And of course, that's just at 1 year of collections. So on impact fees, for roads, you can use it for additional turn lanes, traffic signals, sidewalks, transportation capacity items, in addition to existing components. So basically, it has to be adding capacity to a roadway, making it a benefit to those who are paying the fee, is how impact fees work. So Parks and Rec, you could do additional playgrounds. So that's if you have an existing playground and you want to add some swing sets for that additional people who are coming in, you can do that, but you couldn't just replace an existing playground that's not adding capacity to that playground. Or add additional amenities, you could do that as well. For law enforcement, it's somewhat tricky because it has to be for those new deputies that are needed for that additional impact that those people paying that impact fee are paying. So it would have to be for the new law enforcement and their vehicles, their equipment needed, so that way they provide a benefit to those paying the impact fee. So that concludes the information that we were going to go over. So now, if the board would like to discuss any options, or I think Brad has a follow-up as well.
Yeah, so we did not cover franchise fees, and that is another option of revenue. Just didn't have the time to pull all that data together with all the other things we had going. But in summary, while a lot of information, a lot of good information, perhaps not as much of new information for you folks, for the board, but we're constantly hearing of the need for citizens to be informed and be involved, even though we do thank the 5 that are here today. We still hear it all the time. So our request is to have some staff-led educational work sessions throughout the county, along with meeting with our Chamber of Commerce's. And we'd like to do that over the next quarter. Then we can compile that feedback together and schedule another workshop for the BOCC, say the late February timeline. Did I miss somebody? Somebody said there was 6. What was it? I wasn't counting. I should have counted our fine deputy in the back as a citizen. I'm sorry.
I'm counting 8. 9 with our deputy.
County employees don't count.
Everybody counts.
Everybody counts.
Thank you, Sabrina, Jane, Brad, everyone on staff that worked on this. I'm sorry, I know that's a lot of information to try to research, digest, put into a format where it's relatively easy to understand, via graphics and that kind of thing. It'd be difficult for someone just listening online and not watching it to really grasp a lot of those numbers. So it won't always translate easily, but I think the most important thing about this is the opportunity to get it out to the residents and to the business owners, and for everyone to see, what we're up against as a board and as a county, so they can better understand what the options moving forward are. Where are existing sources of revenue? What are the challenges we have? They can see where we're spending the money, right? So how much we're spending on the roads, how much we're spending on, stormwater maintenance, how much we're spending on recreation. And, if there's residents that want a bigger investment in recreation, that money's got to come from somewhere. We're either going to have to divert that money from where it's being spent already, roads, bridges, drainage, that kind of thing. I don't think that's going to be a very popular idea. So we're going to have to figure out a revenue source in order to fill the needs or meet the requests of citizens. And I think that's the thing that everyone has to remember out there. For every citizen there is that says, I want help with traffic, there's another person saying, I'm not worried about traffic, I'm worried about flooding, because their street flooded. And then there's another person who says, I'm not worried about traffic, I moved here from some other place and traffic here's not bad at all compared to where I came from, or compared to driving, an hour to the east or an hour north of us. Traffic's not a problem for me. I want a place for my kid to go swim, or I want another soccer field, or I want a football field, or I want You've got retired people that say, well, maybe the traffic's not so bad, I want a pickleball court. Everyone has a different request and a different thing that they're looking for. And I think that's the hardest thing that we have to do up here is how do we balance all that? How do we find the funding sources and how do we try to meet the needs of all those citizens? And you can't say yes to everybody. And that's the hardest part, I think, and that's why we get paid to sit here. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? No. Well, thank you very much. Oh, Commissioner Calkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this discussion. I'm always okay with information. I'm always okay with staff compiling up, all the information. If it were up to me, I'm only one person. I wouldn't even be discussing revenue increases. I believe we have plenty of revenue coming into the county, and we have a lot of projects that are getting completed, a lot of roads being paved. Of course, when it comes to government always wants more, always. I remember we had this big debate about the trash fees, and we voted 4-1 to increase the trash fees. Well, as you notice, Adams Sanitation and some others have raised their prices. Why? To cover those trash fees they got to pay at the dump. I love the discussion, the last meeting when Commissioner Parker brought up lowering property tax. That was the kind of discussion that was good. And there's a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of waste and a lot of meetings we had. I mean, just earlier, $15,000 we just wasted, in my opinion. And until we stop wasting money, I think absolutely we need no franchise fees, no tax increase, no sales tax, none of this. I would just say, no, we're taxed enough already, and we need to focus on building roads and paving roads and doing what we got, live within our means. We took good care of our employees. They're being taken care of. They're getting the funds they need. Even though I might have disagreed with some actions previously of hiring, adding more employees, we've done that. I'll never advocate for, cutting anybody. And my job is to help them. They live in our community as best as we can. And so I think we got a good system going now, and we just need to end this discussion about revenue increases. I think, again, we're taxed enough already.
Commissioner. I'm a little lost. I would like to see that whole dissertation broken down in the same way we just looked at, and maybe I could understand it, because I'm seeing one of the leanest ran counties in the area. It's a lean running machine, and when we are not stopping the influx of people in here, people want to move here, and therefore we need to increase services. We've got to look at the there's a time and a place to look at the national outlook right now. But I know I'm not the only realtor up here, but I'm seeing a steady decrease in our property values. They're starting to come around. They're starting to hit. You're going to start seeing prices reduced. I'm seeing A-Door in Pensacola, prices reduced all the way down the road. It's occurring, and if we do not start looking at the future and I hate taxes just like anybody else does, but I'm not going to sit here and say no more new taxes and read my lips, and I'm not going to sit here and spill out a bunch of garbage when I know we have to have an income to supply the services to the citizens that are here, have been here, and coming in. So I don't want to look at it in a kindergarten sense, but I'd rather look at it more in a collegiate sense here. we can't just say no more new nothing and yeah, we're good. We're good to go without, I'd be really interested in seeing that broken down because I'm having a hard time understanding that. But I want to commend you guys in the budget department. You guys do a great job of laying this out for us. I hope that everybody sees what we have and how many eggs we got in the ad valorem basket. Because we've got a lot of eggs in that basket. And we're looking at something that's, it's something that happened back in 07, 08. So we need to keep our eyes open. We need to keep putting our thinking caps on. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. I'll add to that. I think the discussion today and the presentation is about what the revenue sources are, giving us a picture of what that looks like, and I think we're the ones that are tasked to try to figure out what's the best balance in those sources. I can't speak for everyone here, but I can tell you, I've mentioned before, my time in business and the past 20 years that I've owned an independent business. And I can tell you, it's really easy to say, I'll never do this or I'll never do that. I'll never cut staff. I'll never vote to do that. I can tell you I'm not positive, but I might be the only one up here that has had to make a tough payroll and continues to do so 20 years later. It's real easy to say I'll never do something until you have to look an employee in the eye and let them go, because you just simply don't have enough money coming in. Those of us that lived here during 2008 and 2009 and 2010 and remember what happened in Santa Rosa County, we know, even though I wasn't sitting up here, I know the struggle it put this county in and what had to happen, and employees had to be let go, and employees retired early. And we are just now recovering from the problems of 2008. It's a long time ago. It's 15 years. And there were decisions that were made in 09, 2010, 2011 that people made because they thought it was the right thing to do at the time, but I think history shows that they probably weren't the best decisions sometimes. And things could have been done differently. And what I would rather have is this board, and I can, at least for myself, I'm not going to repeat the same mistake, right? I'm going to do what I think is right going forward. Politics be damned. My reelection or political life could go down the tubes. I could care less, because I believe that our job up here is to do the right thing for Santa Rosa County, period. That's the residents out there. That's the person in green that wears that uniform every day. That's the firefighters out there. That's this staff. I think you saw earlier I made a point to stand up for staff because I think it's the right thing to do, and they're the ones that get the job done. We're just the ones that are up here making the decisions for them. Be very careful what you say until you've made a payroll, until you've had to make those tough decisions. And I can tell you, the worst thing you can do is to have everything in one basket, to not have any diversification of sources of income. It's terrible for a business. It's terrible for a county. And we are certainly way too dependent on ad valorem taxes, particularly a category of taxes where every year politicians use that as a way to garner votes. We'll put it on the ballot in 2024. Let's say anyone that drives a red car can get a reduction on their ad valorem taxes this year. You'll get an exemption. And the next year, anyone drives a blue pickup truck. And the next year, it's nurses. The next year, it's somebody else. People will always vote for less taxes for themselves without looking at what it really costs everybody else around them. Because those same people are still using our roads. They're still using our parks. They're still causing county staff to have to do work for them. And some of those people aren't paying anything, and that's just not fair. And that's why I appreciate the conversation, you guys bringing the information forward, so we can figure out how do we make that cost shared amongst everyone that comes in Santa Rosa County, whether it's every resident that lives here, as well as every visitor that comes and spends time in Santa Rosa County. I think we have to try to, it'll never be perfect, but I think there are ways to make Santa Rosa County less dependent on property taxes, less dependent on just new construction. And it's obvious from the numbers that new construction is having a significant impact on our revenue. So for the folks out there that say they're not against development, but then they give all these reasons why they really are, I think this will help give them the information. Once presented with the facts, if you choose to ignore them, that's one thing. But the facts are there. And new development clearly pays the bigger portion of the bill in Santa Rosa County. Now, I'm not thrilled about the idea that the way the bills run out, that we've got, at least a 12-month to possibly 24-month gap, so to speak. I think we have to figure out what we do about that gap. But just once again, thank you, staff, for putting this out there. And it's obvious based on the discussion, there's a lot to think about. And I look forward to you guys getting out, meeting with citizens, helping them see the information, helping answer the questions for them. It's one thing it comes from you guys, right? It's another thing it comes from us, right? Elected official says something, it's always taken with, oh, they're trying to get something out of me, they're not telling me the truth. So I appreciate you guys being willing to step up and do that. And I know you'll take some heat, but I know you guys will be honest with the citizens and be factual, and I appreciate that. Commissioner Caucus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You brought up, the crash of 2008, and history always repeats itself, and Commissioner Smith also kind of brought up the same thing. And I agree with Commissioner Smith on the fact that, this has been going on for, 100 years, where the economy goes up and down, and we have booming times and we have slow times. In 2008, what happened is the county before that, they overhired, and they got to a point where now the revenues were not coming in, and so what had to happen is the county actually had to cut staff, and it was absolutely a disaster. And I remember those times, and it's why I was always cautious about hiring. And I told Devan and Brad and Jane, I said, if any time that y'all have to hire someone, just make sure there's a darn good case. I mean, make sure, and they've really tried their best and have done a great job at that. And I know we're all not going to agree on, one of us may think that, we shouldn't hire any more people. Another one may think, oh, we need 5 person in this department. Another person thinks we need 10 persons in this department. And we all have different opinions on that. One of the most important things, though, is we got to keep our taxes low here. We do not want to become like New Jersey, California, because they pay a lot of taxes in those states, and they get they were all just like us at one time, saying, oh, it's for this or for that. And you go drive through those states, and you'll notice there's more potholes than anything. You pay $40 to go through a thing, and you ask yourself, where does all the money go? And no, we are not in that situation. But if we start now, we will become that. And that's why I will be up here. I've said this for years, and I will fight against any kind of tax increase. Now, if you all have a darn good reason and can prove it and show it, but I've heard our revenues are great. Our employees are being taken care of. We're paving Woodbine. We're paving roads all over the place. We're doing fantastic. And our seniors are suffering right now. They can't afford eggs. They can't afford milk. Biden is destroying our economy. And they need to at least know that this county commissioners will make sure that we have their back, that we care about them. And so, thank you.
So just related to the discussion, specifically on the property tax, and I should have had it in the slides, but speaking of the recession, it started in 2006 is when our taxable value hit the peak in that tax year, and it was 2017 before the tax value was back above what it was in 2006. So it took us 11 years to recoup from the downturn of the economy related to property tax revenue. And so right now, if you take our 2024 budget, our net budget is around $200 million. So that's taking out all of those double counts where we move money from this fund to that fund. So $200 million, and 98 million of that is ad valorem. So to the point that you are all talking about, the fact that our reliance on ad valorem is 50% of our revenue is ad valorem, and that is not the state standard, if you will. Ad valorem reliance in other jurisdictions is much lower than that. 26%, I think, is the average. So just to add to what you all were discussing and the facts behind that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to set my stopwatch. I'll keep myself to under 4 minutes. I'm going to talk about some giants that came before us. The first one, just because I'm looking that way, would be Greg Brown's dad. Greg Brown, that was our property appraiser between 2000 and I guess it was 2020. God, it's hard to believe you've been in office for 3 years. If it wasn't for Greg Brown, you wouldn't be getting property taxes off of the beach, and he fought that battle against a lot of political naysayers. I'll also talk about, I'll kind of go down the line, how my mind was. It was Commissioner Lynchard and Commissioner Salter and Commissioner Williamson, Commissioner Cole, and did I just miss one? Yeah, Lynchard, Salter, Cole, and Williamson. And who am I missing? I said, oh, that's right, 2 Williamsons. Yeah. I was doing them both, but my count was so off. I had Rob and I had Jerry. They voted to increase the gas tax. They saw that even against a lot, and I think Jerry was against it. I mean, I'm going to assume, like, there was a lot of people against it. And Jerry, for the record, voted against the 6 cents. So he voted for 5 cents, not 6 cents, whatever. Anyway, semantics. What was proven was that our gas prices really didn't change compared to our neighbors. They also voted, they pioneered, they went out, and of course I may not agree with kind of how they did it, and some of those guys, I can tell you in private, definitely wish they would have wordsmithed it different, but they at least got the half-cent sales tax out there for the citizens to vote on. And one of the things, God, I'm down to 2 minutes that I'll say, I want to point out, like the scary threats of no impact fees, no sales tax. Let me tell y'all something. My life, I've said it before, but I'm going to be abundantly clear. My life, financially, school-wise, driving back and forth to work, is not impacted whether y'all vote to renew the half cent, increase the half cent, no half cent. I believe in giving the citizens the option. Absolutely. I've always said, I think the sales tax is a fair tax. You can vote for it or against it. I promise you this, guys. Doesn't affect my lifestyle, doesn't affect my paycheck, don't affect me getting my kids to school. It does not bother me. So I'll just give you that disclaimer. So there's nothing scary about, hey, we're not going to vote for the sales tax. I absolutely will be in support of allowing the citizens to vote for a sales tax. That's up to the citizens. And to me, it's that simple. Like, do you want this, whether it be a half cent and 15 to 16 million or a full cent of 30 to 32 million dollars invested in the infrastructure of your community? That's up to you. I mean, Brad showed you the numbers. Cost you about $60 a person a year. Do you want those investments in your community or not? I don't care, okay? That's up to each individual. You want to incorporate, you can incorporate every square inch of this county other than my house. I don't care. Those are the things where I think people somehow get off on, like, you know, we have some secretive thing. Guess what? Our paycheck doesn't matter whether we bring in $1 million or 200 million of taxes, okay? I'll surmise it by this. I am going to push for a property tax decrease this year. Ever since I ran in 2016, we talked about lowering that portion. I have stood behind, without wavering, always, for the sales tax. Now I'm saying, hey, look, I and I can tell you my wife will vote for the sales tax. The rest of you can vote however you want. I'm not going to lobby you. It's either you want the investment or you don't. But continuing to burden the property owners on the property tax, I'm out, man. I'll leave you with this. There's my 4 minutes. I'll leave you with this. We teach our kids to treat people equally, no matter their skin color, their religion, where they're from. We teach them to be fair, right? I mean, I think that's the cardinal rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Thank you, Sabrina, for pointing out there's nothing about property taxes fair. The politicians in Tallahassee have screwed it up abundantly. And watch why I'm the first one that says, I hate the government as much as the rest of y'all. Property taxes are so unjust and unequally applied that yes, I am for reducing property tax because that's the only thing we can do. I'm not for continuing to burden the ones that are already toting the majority of the load. So there you go. Do what you want with the sales tax. That's where the Parker family stands.
All right, if there's nothing else from the board, we'll open up for public comment. I didn't have anyone signed up on the sheet earlier, but go ahead, sir. Just make sure you hit the button and then state your name.
Peter Branch, Navarre. I'm going to speak about the impact fees. As we noticed that we're not getting any revenue for houses built 2 years in the past. We don't see any money. Well, they're getting to use our roads, school systems, whatever, for free. So I think that the impact fees, and they can be phased like a housing project is, and you need to start at the permit part of the housing. So I don't know, what do you charge? $250 for a permit?
No, sir. It's unfortunately, even for a small starter home, almost $1,000. It's $900 and some change.
Okay.
And that's just the county permit, not even the water, sewer,
Right.
impact fees, fire impact fees.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are all paid up front? Those are all paid up front? Okay. So, I guess I don't have too much to say about that if you're getting $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 for a permit per lot up front to build a house in this county. Is that what we're getting? We're getting that much money?
Well, it depends on where the lot is and the size of the house. That's the most accurate I could tell you. If you want to go build one in Pace, yeah, you're gonna be you can be 10 grand out the gate right at it.
Okay.
And now with the new land development code that just passed, there's going to be a massive amount of costs on houses. And so that's another thing.
What else I noticed is that half of the Lorem tax is going to the school board. So people with kids, that's really impacts the infrastructure. Totally. The roads, the school system, all of it. So, I don't know how you put taxes on kids, because you said it by the citizen, but you're taxing by the taxpayer. It seems to me that people like me that don't have any children don't benefit by any of this mess. I would like to see the impact fees go up. If you can afford to live in Santa Rosa County, you can afford to pay a little bit more to come in here and use our stuff. Other than that, we do need franchise fees. We need our business licensings to go up. And we need to renew those business licenses on an individual basis for how well that those businesses are serving our community, as opposed to all these strip malls with nobody in them. If you understand what I'm getting at, you're not getting any taxes. It's not beneficiating the citizens to have empty buildings all over because failed businesses for whatever reason. We are headed towards this 08 scenario. It's as clear as everybody here sees it. I don't know how we get by it, but That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Good afternoon, Aaron Williams. Sabrina, great job. This was really good. I think what we got was some critical thinking that we need to do. We got to get there. We got to think our way out of this. We have to use history. History is a great teacher as how you move forward. And if we don't do that, we're going to repeat something. So great job, Sabrina and staff, for bringing us information to where now we can, challenge each and every one of us to do some doggone critical thinking for solutions. It will never be to where we can say unequivocally what we cannot do. History just does not support that. As officials, I would ask all of you to challenge yourselves with the critical thinking. Is sales tax increase the right way? Okay. Is that going to mathematically get us to where we need to get to? And that's where we need to really get into, make our hard decisions based on some good mathematics and not necessarily what our feelings are. Because I feel as if when we look at who's paying property tax value, I'm a 100% disabled veteran. Well, when I look at the board, I don't know what unit you guys are in. And if you didn't go and do the task that I did and my compadres did, representing only 1% of this country, then this benefit of that, it seems fair to me. It may not feel fair to you, but, go, Israel's getting it in right now. Go get it. Go do your part and defend the country. So when we look at how our taxes are skewed in a way, look at whys. The whys really do matter. If we still value those whys today, then we leave those things in place. If we don't value those whys the same, then we should have a discussion. But all of us should have a fair and equal opinion of it. But again, Sabrina, thank you very much. This is the best one I've seen. I know we're going to, Carlton, I brag on you all the time, buddy, but man, that's really good thinking. Really good. The way you thinking through it matters, and leading our county and leading this board, thinking through it methodically as a business owner, and taking whatever you personally can gain out of it out the way and just looking at the people. Thank you for that.
Jerry Cooey Milton. Sometimes things build up on you and you just need to say it. James, in all fairness, you made your statements. We got a county commission meeting 2 weeks from now. I expect to see every bit of waste and fraud that you know of put up on the screen. Don't respond to me because you don't allow back and forth. I appreciate the hard work that went into this. I think I've been pretty clear through the years. I've always felt that the property owners in Santa Rosa County have carried too much of the burden. My first tax bill, we were probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 85 or 90% of the total take. As stated, we're still representing about 50% of it, and the state average is 26%. I have also been very clear, if there's a legal, moral, and ethical way to do it, I'd eliminate property taxes because you never truly own your property. And we need to think outside the box on that, whether it's a legislative change. I agree with you in the frustrations of the legislature next year could say we're going to go from a 25 to a 50 across the board. And then where does that leave us? Because we're too reliant on that. We must diversify what we spend in taxes, and we have slowly chipped away from the reliance on property taxes, but we're still way too high. And all of you need to, seriously, I know you are thinking about it, but we've got to think about that more. I appreciate the fact that
in one of the fastest growing counties in Santa Rosa County, we're finally setting aside new revenue to infrastructure. I encourage staff all the time to do everything they can to continue that practice. Because it's not just $5 million this year, it's the same $5 million next year, and the multiplying effect gets greater and greater and greater. We've got to continue to think about the investment in the infrastructure. 100%, our economic development group is doing a fantastic job, but I'm going to tell you, you don't know how many opportunities that we may have missed because they see the traffic pile up on Highway 90. They land at Pensacola Airport, they come, they look around, they eat lunch a couple days, and they see Highway 90 on the west side and Highway 90 on the east side and Highway 98, and they go, we're never going to invest money in this place, and they get in a plane and leave. Okay, that is something that we have to focus on. We've got to get these projects moving. We've got to make sure that we're doing the right things. And just a couple things that I would think would make a huge difference. Why aren't we 4-laning Magnolia today? That ties 2 4-lane roads together. Why aren't we 4-laning Anderson, which is the shortest distance between Berry Hill and Northrop? Why aren't we 4-laning South Airport and Radio Road, which will come out 100 yards from the interstate on Ward Basin Road? Those are all places that's going to take very little effort and are short distances that would make a big impact. And I talk with staff all the time about telling the story. I guarantee you that'll make an impact on people. Just those 3 things there. Good work. I appreciate the effort in infrastructure. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? All right. I don't see anything else from the board, so just once again, thank you to staff. Good presentation, lots to chew on, lots to think about, and I think we're done for now. Thank you.